You're watching the fifth lesson in percents. In this lesson, we'll be talking about combining percents. So, in everyday life, percents play a role. For example, when you buy something, they add a little bit extra to what you're buying, to the price of what you're buying. And this is called the GST, right? And typically it's about 5% GST in Alberta. So, when you buy something, they add 5% to your um, item when you buy it. So it's always a little bit more expensive than what the tag says. So you want to buy a bicycle that's priced at $523. What would the GST added to the price be? What is the new total? So GST, 5% in Canada. So what is 5% in 523? So try not to use a calculator. We've talked about in the previous lesson how to find percentages without calculators. So 5% can be found by taking 523 and finding 10% of it, right? So 10% of 523, once again, there's only one zero there. So you take the decimal, which is here, and you go plop it right there. So it becomes 52.3. Okay, so now we know 10% is 52.3. Okay, well, if 10% is 52.3, 5% is half of that. So 52.3 should also be halved. So half of 52.3 is 26.15. And that's it. So the GST of the bike is $26.15. So the new total must be $549.15 for the bike. So we found the 5% GST and we found the new total without using a calculator. This is a way in which you can find the prices of anything. So a lot of times businesses will try and make things look cheaper by excluding GST, by excluding taxes. And by knowing how to do this, by knowing how to calculate percentages in your head, just by finding 10% and then cutting it in half for the 5, you can find out how much extra they're going to charge you. Oops, too far. There you go. So in Alberta, we're lucky to only have GST. In other provinces, they also have PST. Some people in other provinces need to calculate 2 different percentages. Great. So let's get back to our bike. Now let's say there's also a PST of 6%. Now we have GST and PST. How do we get the new total? Well, we can find the value of each percentage separately, then add them up. So with a GST of 5% and a PST of 6%, well, before we calculated 26.15 for the GST, so what's the PST? Well, we already know the GST is 5%, right? We know it's 26.15 because we did our calculation. How do we get the 6%? Well, we know what 10% is. Well, if you divide 10% by 10, you get 1%. And whatever you do to one side, you do to the other side. So you divide this by 10. And again, when you divide by 10, you just take that decimal and go boop, and you move it there. So now you know 1% is 5.23. So we know 5%, right, is 26.15. And we know 1%, which is 5.23. So you just add them together. And the new PST is $31.38. So when we do this, we add up all our GST and PST, and we end up with $580, right? And so this small tax adds up a lot of money to the price of the bike. Is there a faster way to solve this equation? Well, you can add up the percents and find the value. So you can take the GST and PST and add them together, which makes it 11%. So you find 52, so you find the 10%, you find the 1%, add them together, 57.53, just like before. So you can either find the 5% and the 6% separately, or you can add the 5 and 6 together and find that percentage. So let's say we're buying a different bike for $800, but it's also discounted by 20%. What is the new price? Ignore GST and PST. Okay, well, you know 10% of 800, right, is $80 because we just moved the decimal over. Then 20% is double that, right? So you just double this, which gives you $160. The new price of the bike should cost $640 because we take that price off because it's discounted by 20%. So let's say you're buying a bike for $800, but it's discounted by 20%. And then the next day, they take off another 20%. How much is the bike now? Is it cheaper than the $523 bike? Well, before we found that 20% of 800 is 160. So why can't we take off another 160 if it's discounted by 20% again? So would I just take off another 160 from the cheaper 523 bike, right? Sorry, 640, my bad. So we took off $160 off the $800 bike, and we got 640. Well, you take off another 20%. Do I take off another $160? Why can't we do that? Well, you can't take off another 160 because the new number is no longer, that number is no longer 20% of the price. The price changed, right? After the first 20% discount, the price became, sorry, that's a mistake, I gotta fix that, 640. 640, right? So it became 640. So we find 10% of 640, which ends up becoming 64, which ends up becoming 128. Sorry about that mistake. Right? So we lost this price, which was 20%. 160 was 20% of the original 800, but we're taking off another 20% off the 640. So this time, instead of taking $160, we're taking $128. Right? We're taking off $128. So the new price is $592. It is not cheaper than the $523 bike. So understanding how percents work can help you make correct choices when you're buying things. Because a lot of times stores will do that. They'll say 20% plus an extra 20%. And you'll say, wow, I'm saving 40%. You're not, though, right? Because 20% off the first price and 20% off the second price is not the same value. It doesn't decrease by the same amount. So understanding how these percents work can help you make right choices when you buy things. And it can also help you compare prices. So, two stores are selling a jacket that normally goes for $200. Store 1 is giving a 20% discount, while Store 2 is giving a 10% discount one day and an additional 10% discount the next. Which is the better price? So from the previous example, you should already be able to find the answer, but let's try and solve this. So we have two stores, right? So Store 1, we have 20% of 200. That's what Store 1 is just doing, 20% flat. Well, 10% of 200 is 20, so I can multiply this by 2, which will then multiply this by 2 to make 40. So now I know that the price we take off is $40 because we're taking 20% off. So we go 200 minus 40 is 160. Okay, well, when we look at Store 2, we have 10% off one day and 10% off the next. So we take 10% of 200, which is $20. So on the first day, right, we take off $20, the new price is 180. Well, still more expensive than 160. So we'll come back on the second day. We take another 10% off. But we're not taking 10% of 200. We're taking 10% of the new price, which is 180, which is 18, right? So 180 minus 18 is 162. And so in this case, Store 2 still costs a little bit more. Even though it seems like the same, Store 2 still would cost a little bit more. And stores do this all the time to make it seem like, oh, Store 2 is also doing 20%. But they're really not. So try these practice questions. It's important to do these questions because it is very applicable in real life. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you next lesson.